Today's guest is Cara Amore. Her resume is going to make your head explode. She is a New Yorker who started her career journey as a chef in the corporate kitchen of the World Financial Center. After working in various kitchens, she traded in her apron for the corporate world, focusing on business development. Then she became an entrepreneur, selling merchandise through a company called Got Swag. Soon after that, she got into this, get this, stand-up comedy. And then another major pivot into becoming a private investigator. So now she's back on stage. I'm so excited to have her on the show because I have a big space in my heart for comedians. Cara, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda.
So I'm not going to flex or anything, but in 2022, I took a comedy class and I did a 5-minute routine for our showcase. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. And the reason is I thought, well, I'm a TV reporter. I've been in front of the public eye my whole life. It's so hard to write good comedy and then to deliver it. So I have so much admiration for what you guys do because I know it's not easy. And I've had a little time to look at some of your videos and I really enjoy what you're doing on stage. Talk a little bit about what that feels like to be up on stage in front of a crowd, making people laugh.
Yeah, so it's probably the greatest feeling in the world. Absolutely the greatest feeling in the world. To have people respond, because just like I think as a newscaster, it's a conversation. So, my part is what I'm saying and their part is the laugh, and from the second I hit the stage for the very first time, like you, I took a comedy class and I really thought it was going to be like, I'm going to take this comedy class. I'm going to have my little graduation and that's going to be it. That's going to be my swan song. I'm done, because I was in business for a lot of years. So when that wasn't the case, I was totally smitten with stand-up comedy. And at that point, I just, hit the ground running and would put a mic anywhere anybody would allow me to, and did my own open mics, did my own shows, because as a new comedian, I'm sure nobody wants to put you on stage because you stink.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember a time that you've bombed where you knew it was happening when you were on stage?
Yeah, I mean, I just recently bombed completely. I was like, wow, these people really hate me. I've never really, and I hadn't really had that in a long time. So I was completely shocked and taken aback. And so I was doing a show, a fundraiser, and they hated me. And then I had to shake it off because I was running to another fundraiser, like across, the town. And
was that one better? Was the second one better?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So you have to say to yourself, something was off, something was off. And could have been me, the way I hit the stage, or could have been just how they were receiving the information I was giving them.
Yeah, I remember talking about this with our teacher. You have to read the room and see what they're responding to and what they're not responding to. And sometimes you just get an audience that's not a fit for your material. And you just have to keep going, right? Because you're a performer, you're on stage, you don't stop. But that's got to be hard to overcome when you're in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also many years in, so it doesn't affect you in the same. Like, if I had been a young comic and that happened, and I had to go to another show, that would have been hard to shake off, But like you said, knowing that you have to be in the moment and know that it could have, like you said, they just weren't connecting with my material, And the gentleman who, went on before me, I think was a little more appropriate for a soccer team, a children's soccer team fundraiser.
Where do you get your material from? Because what I love about a lot of it is that it seems to come from real life and specifically from women who are in their 50s and up and kind of the crazy experiences that we have.
Yeah. All of my material is autobiographical or, drawing from something that's happened in my life. And I feel that has always been my voice, and that makes me the most authentic me. So that's really where everything comes from.
Do you walk around with a notepad or do you put things in your phone? How do you amass all that material?
Um, I'm old school. I have a notebook. I have every notebook I've ever written in for stand up. And, even when I was in business, I had only had notebooks. People were like, "You're always carrying that notebook and pen." And I'm like, that's how I, take everything down.
Right. So let's back up a little bit because you've had so many experiences, and I want to hear about how you got to comedy. So you started as a chef, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that, and then about how you got to being a private investigator.
So I always have the love of cooking. I still do. I was very good at it at a very young age. My mother was a very good cook. My father was a very good cook. So I kind of had that, in me. And I went to school. Half of my day in high school was culinary arts and the other half was, just regular school. And that's how I started. And right out of high school, I went to work really, I was already working in restaurants since I was 15 years old. And, I got my first job, lucky enough, in, the World Financial Center in a corporate kitchen as a result of, my sister. And, she was in the, equipment end of the restaurant industry. And then she knew the chef and she said, "My sister's looking for a job." And he said, "Sure, I'd love to interview her." And that's how I got it. And so I was trained in being a chef, like, food. And not too long after I got there, the chef was like, "Listen, the pastry chef's assistant is leaving. We'd like you to go over to pastry." And I said, "I'm not trained in pastry." And he said, "Well, you're going to get trained in pastry." And I was fortunate enough to have an amazing teacher. She was unbelievable. I was a 19-year-old kid who had no experience in that world. And she took me under her wing and taught me everything. So then I ended up learning pastry too.
So you were a chef for a while. You did lots of different things within the culinary arts, and then you went into corporate America. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I kind of had a pivot in my life. I needed to get out of the restaurant business or the kitchen world. I was struggling with addiction. And so being in that world was not good for me. You're up all night, it's easy to party and blah, 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 blah. And so at that point, I made a conscious decision to walk away. And, wasn't really trained for anything else. I'd always been in the restaurant world. So, somebody said to me, "You have the gift of gab. You should sell something." So, I said, "Okay, somebody teach me that." And they did. I went into selling yellow page advertising. And if you have young
Back in the
listeners,
day, they're going to be like, "What is that?"
yeah. So you'd have to finger through a business yellow pages and you'd see the plumber or the doctor or whomever had an ad. And that's what I was selling. And I did that for many years.
And then you went into private investigation. I mean, talk about pivots. You've had a lot of pivots. So how did you get into that?
Yeah. So, I went into promotional products because that's when I was selling yellow page advertising for a while. And then I went into promotional products, anything branded, with somebody's logo. And I was exhibiting at the Pier 94 in Manhattan, just to sell my stuff, to get people get companies to come and, see what I was able to do. And well, I had the most people at my booth because I'm good at it. I'm very good at it and very good at self-promotion. And the people who were doing the security, because the lines were backing up. So they wanted to see why everybody wanted to be at my booth. And I got to know the owner of the security company, private investigation company. And he said, you would be an unbelievable undercover.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Sounds like something out of a movie.
it really was. It was really like out of a movie. And he said, I think that you would be great with what we do. I had been taking acting. I had been taking, I was a stand-up comedian at that point. And he said, one of the things that you need as an undercover is to be somebody else. And he said, I really feel that you'd be great at that. And I said, okay. So it was like the time when the economy was really changing and it was going to be very difficult to continue with what I was doing. People were losing their marketing jobs, left and right. So I started working for him part-time as an undercover. And
explain that. What did you do? I mean, give me a scenario.
So we did specifically trademark counterfeiting. So anything counterfeit except for money. And the most of what was being sold as counterfeit in New York City was pocketbooks and Rolex watches.
I was going to say watches. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would pose as, a shopper or, a big buyer, depending on the type of, job we were doing. So, and we worked with state, federal, and local law enforcement. And also the brands would hire us to
make sure their products weren't being undercut by a fake knockoff on the street. Wow, don't come to my house and look in my closet, Cara, okay? I'm not saying there are knockoffs there, but I'm also not saying there aren't, okay? I'm taking the fifth on that. So what was the craziest case you ever had as a private investigator, or the craziest situation?
So there was a very big, I know nobody believes this when I tell them, the largest case we ever did, or the craziest case we ever did, was counterfeit chapstick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and the biggest reason is because it's being ingested.
Okay.
So even though it's only going on you, it's going into your body.
And so if it's counterfeit, it's not FDA regulated.
No. Right. So anything you know about pharmaceutical, I mean, it's an over the counter, but they're made in clean rooms. They're like you said, been licensed.
There's a lot of oversight. There's a lot more oversight. Okay.
A lot of oversight. And it made a huge impact on the company. And they said, we have to get this off the street.
So were you ever scared being a private investigator? Were you ever put in a situation where you thought, oh, this isn't good?
Yes, I had been in situations where, oh, this isn't good. But I never felt scared because we were always had backup, ready to jump in at any time.
So fast forward, now you're in comedy. Like I said, I've watched some of your videos. You're so talented. I really enjoyed, your presentation, your take on life, your insight. It's a tough road though. I mean, to be a comedian, to make that your career, it's a tough road. When did you say, this is it, this is what I'm going to do, and kind of put all these other things aside?
I would say probably like 10 years ago, I mean, really moving forward. Cause as you know, to be a stand-up comedian, it takes a long time, to really hone your craft. I would say the last 2 years, though, I gave up my world of Manhattan and living in New York, and I moved to fairly rural area of Connecticut, and I was able to really give it everything I have, and say to myself, there's nothing that's going to stand in my way at this point, and you have to be on stage a lot.
Yeah. And how does that impact your family? I know you have a son, Ben, right? He's 17, and you have a partner that you are with in Connecticut. I mean, how do they handle it when you're like, I got to go to New York. I got to go do stand up for, whatever, a couple hours, couple days?
Yeah. Well, so actually Ben is now an adult and living on his own.
So you don't have to worry about
I don't have
that.
to worry about him. He's thrilled. He loves to come to my shows and he loves to hear everything I say about him. And then my partner is very, very, very supportive. He said, whatever you need to do, I'm behind you 100%. But as you know, not every show is great. So, he stays behind. He has his own life and he has his own interests.
Right. And it's probably intimidating too to have him in the audience because, some of the things are going to be at his expense. That's just life. You're talking about your family and your friends and your partner. That's just how it's going to come out. And they don't always want to hear that, I would imagine. I think there's different obstacles to every industry for women, but what are the specific ones in comedy for women? And in comedy for women of a certain age, I mean, does it get harder? Are there hurdles or are there things you have to overcome?
It's always been hard for women, more difficult for women because they'll put a whole show together of, men and they'll say, well, we already have one female.
Like that's the quota.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens all the time. We already have a woman on the show. Like we're all going to talk about exactly the same thing, or we're all going to make you laugh with exactly the same thing. It's not true. Just
One
like
size
men
fits all. Right. You're interchangeable, in other words, versus, well, this comedian has this take on life and this comedian has this take. So they're not looking at that. They're not looking at you as an individual. So I guess you just have to keep knocking on the doors, right? To get in there.
You have to really, I feel, give them no excuse to not put you on the show because you're that good. Doesn't matter what your gender is at that point. And then there's a level that you get to where people are like, oh, okay, yeah, we want her on the show. She's a draw, or she's that good, And I think that's the mindset you have to have when you're going into this. You have to have the mindset that I am so good that they could not say no. I will say though, this is the big thing. When you said like a woman of a certain age, I never made that like distinction until there were a lot of young people in the audience. And I thought to myself, there's things I'm saying that they never even experienced.
Right. And so you have to not dumb it down, but you have to explain more.
Yes.
And then maybe say, well, your mom might have told you about this or, something like that.
Right. Exactly. Or, realize that they're listening to somebody who is like their mother and realize they might have
use
to
that.
pivot.
Yeah. And also you can use that, I could be your mother, obviously. One of the things we talk about on this show is transformation. And obviously you have done that over and over and over again. And a lot of women find this really hard to do, especially later in life. They maybe lose a job or go through a divorce or go through something like you did with addiction or a health crisis. And they think, well, there's not another chapter for me. I don't know what's around the corner. I don't know how to get there. So as someone who has done this multiple times, what would you tell women who are feeling that way?
You have to get the negative self-talk out of your head and realize that, there's always another chapter. There's always another, experience that you can bring to the world, and I think as women, I mean, I've never been anything but we really doubt ourselves so much and are so critical of ourselves, and I think it's because we had to, many of us have brought people in, children into the world and we've seen them through and, and you think, I can't make those kind of pivots or those kind of mistakes or, what if, and I think the biggest thing that you can tell yourself is that I am still a really worthy member of society and can add so much. And why not take the risk? Because if I never take the risk, I'll never get the reward, which is why I went into stand-up in the first place.
Right. So it sounds like what you're saying, and a lot of my guests have said this, it's believing that you're worthy. It's believing that you deserve to be at the table and that you have something to contribute. And I think that's where a lot of women have trouble is that self-worth, that internal conversation with themselves. So you've done a lot of things in your life. I know there's a lot more you want to do. What's on your bucket list?
My bucket list would probably be TV, like a stand-up comedy special, and probably more, in it's so different now than when I started because everything was about network, and network doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. There's so many streaming services and you can get your name out there. I also believe that the bigger thing that I probably haven't done enough of is getting myself out on social media. Yeah.
So where can people find you on social media? How can they follow what you're doing?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and it's all under Cara Amore. Believe it or not, there's no other.
Well, that's good. So then nobody gets you confused. Unfortunately, there is another Amanda Lamb, and she is in HGTV, well, the version of HGTV that exists in the UK.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so when you Google Amanda Lamb, you get her stuff interspersed with mine. So, every once in a while, it'll say something like, Sexy Amanda Lamb was at the beach today on the Riviera. And I was like, what? Oh, it's not me. Or, whatever. So people get those confused. But if they see our pictures side to side, they know. Well, Carrie, you've been a delight. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I wish you so much luck with your comedy because, like I said, it is so challenging, and I'm a huge purveyor of comedy. I watch it online. I go to live shows. I just think laughter is such a huge part of life and joy. And the fact that you get up there and make people laugh is just a great gift. So thank you for sharing that with us. And hopefully everybody will check you out. Like I said, I saw a lot of videos on YouTube. So
Thank you.
You're out there. Yeah. So thanks
I
for being
appreciate it.
here.
Thank you for having me.